Well, good morning, damn fam. Today, recording day is Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. Yep, that's right. And today on the Daily Beaver Morning Show, we are going to be talking trade. The Canada US Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is back in the United States talking to the United States Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Was a short meeting, but it seems that there is going to be something that will be presentable to IQ 47 south of us. And that gives an opportunity for a potential taco. 1 week to go. Where are the bare naked ladies when you need them? Anyway, grab your favorite bevy, pull up a log, make yourself comfortable, because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode 961 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100% Canadian. Hmm? And always beaverific. Today, recording day is Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. And it looks like it's going to be a lovely day here at the Beaver Lodge, which is nice because I have some tennis planned for today and see if I can make it three. Not against the same player, however, this time. So it's my first competitive letter match of this month. I was here last month to play, but for some reason I missed the registration period. I so I went back down to the bottom of the ladder. So I got to work my way up again. But that's okay. I'm looking forward to it because see if I can bring the same attitude to a different player and see what's being thrown at me and adapt on the fly, right? So it's gonna be an exciting test. So the weather is lovely. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corbin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Damn fam, how's your mental health today? Clearly, I'm doing really well. I got tripped up. I was so close to making 7:30 this morning. Damn, I'm so close, so close. I had everything lined up, and as I'm like putting the stuff to Substack to go live there, um, there's something that's changed with Substack. And this doesn't have to do with this specifically, but before I could go on and, let's say I wanted to go at 7:30 and I was, programming the thing in Substack at 7:21, I could set it for 7:30. But now there's this, like, 15-minute block thing. So if I get in at 7:14, I can schedule for 7:30. But if I get in at 7:16 within that 15-minute block, it won't let me schedule until 7:45. So I'm thinking, crap. So now I figured my workaround for that is like to try to program something the night before or first thing as soon as I wake up to like just book the spot, like with the, no title, just a date. So I did that today. And we came to the very last step of copying the stream key into Restream so the things would link. Nope. It's just nope. I was this close. One click, one click. Oh, that's all that had to happen. One click. I'm figuring the workarounds. To be able to, but yeah, it's happened to me a couple times over the last 2 weeks where I'm sitting there and I'm like thinking, well, it's like, but why can't I program this at 7:30? It's like, oh, come on, man, right? So, trying to be a clever beaver, figuring a workaround. Okay, just reserve the spot, right? Like I reserve my court for tennis, and that'll be fine that way. 7:30 will always be blocked, and if anything else tech doesn't go wrong, right? Good to go. But so yeah, never. I think we've all had the experience, right? Like we're filling out a form online or something like that. We've like filled in all the fields or whatnot. We go to click that last thing, and it's like, and nothing happens. It's like you're like, no, 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 no. I don't want to fill all that stuff up again. No. Why? So yeah, what are those mornings? But hey, again, wasn't I've had worse tech issues. Let's put it that way. So I will take that if that's all life is going to throw my way today. It's a good start. All right. So yeah, good mood, good spirit. Had a wonderful time out with my friend Erin. Hey girl. Went out for we went out for trivia night and tacos. And we got to the place and there was tacos, but apparently there was no trivia night. The nights had been changed, but the website hadn't been updated somehow. So we had talking tacos. C'est la vie. You make the most of it. So, yeah, wonderful time with my girl Erin, which was always great. Came home, right? A little time with my Beaver sweetie, preparing the show, and here we are today. So I'm in a good mood, and I got to bed way earlier than I've been normally getting the past little while, just with all the disruptions in the travel. So pretty much at my regular bedtime, my desired regular bedtime, which was very nice, and I got a great night's sleep. So what's not to love? All right, kits and cubs, let's get right into it. Here, I'm seeing the Kit Uncover saying Count Bintface versus Nigel Farage tomorrow. Is there like, is that a debate or something? Let me know because oh my God, there's the yeah. This Count Bintface thing is like really picking up here. But according to the Independent in the UK, Count Bintface would beat Nigel Farage in a head-to-head contest in Clacton if the entire nation was voting. A new poll on the eve of the by-election has found. New polling from More in Common show that in a head-to-head contest, 37% of Britons want Count Bintface to win the seat, while only 32% would back the Reform UK leader. Green Party voters were most likely to prefer Count Bintface to win, with 62% saying so, followed by 56% of Liberal Democrat voters and 54% of Labour voters. The poll also found that 8% of those who voted for Reform UK in the 2024 general election want Count Bintface to win the contest. It too. Across all parties, 32% of those surveys said they didn't know who they wanted to win the seat. Voters in Clacton will head to the polls on Thursday. Okay, that's why you mean. Okay, by Binface versus Farage. It's tomorrow the vote. That's why. Okay. In a by election triggered by Mr. Farage's decision to stand down as the constituency's MP following massive scrutiny over his financial affairs. Mr. Farage dramatically announced that he would step down from Parliament and call a by election in his Clacton seat, which he would contend after claiming he was the victim of an establishment sweet shop. His decision to force a contest followed continued questions about a £5 million donation he received from crypto billionaire Christopher Harborn in exchange for absolutely nothing, we are supposed to believe, and gifts from a convicted criminal, George Cottrell. Wow. So, what are the statistical odds that you would happen to know uh, a crypto billionaire and a convicted criminal, and both of them would like to give you gifts? One of them in the amount of £5 million. Just, you know, uh, for your charming, wonderful, warm, cuddly self. Yeah, that didn't sound right coming out, did it? Yeah, Nigel Farage just gives up that gives off that cuddly teddy bear thing, right? Mr. Farage, so yeah, let's see here. The Tories, Libs, Dems, Greens, and Labours have all announced that they will not stand in the by-election, with Tory leader Kemi Badenoch describing it as, quote, fake, and Sir Keir Starmer calling it a desperate political stunt. Count Binface, a satirical character who has pledged to abolish VAR in football, conscript people who play loud music on public transport, and my personal favorite, nationalize Adele, has now emerged as his main competitor. The comedian, who is described as, quote, an independent space warrior and swears a bin on his head, has stood in a number of elections, including contests against Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, and most recently the by-election in Makerfield, where he received 95 votes. Without other mainstream parties, the by-election is filled with numerous independent candidates, including actor-turned-politician Lawrence Fox, who could steal 2% of the votes, according to a poll by Survation for Mandate Research. Tendering District Council has confirmed a total of 34 candidates, a record for any parliamentary contest. Welcome to the longest ballot, UK. Oh my God. Jeez. Another recent survey by Survation for Mandate Research of voters in Clacton suggests Mr. Farage would win 73% of the vote, while his main rival, Count Binface, could sweep up an estimated 20% of the vote. You know, even 20, that 20%, though, that is sending one hell of a message. I'm saying, but come on, UK. God, you have a chance to rub this guy's nose in it, man. Don't let this pass you by. Ugh. In an Ipsos poll asking the general public who they would vote for in a hypothetical head to head, a third, 33% of British adults said they would prefer Count Binface to win the race, while only 21% backed the Reform UK leader. Mr. Farage's party has been soaring in national polls since Labour won the 2024 general election, winning sweeping victories at 2 consecutive local elections. But since Andy Burnham became Prime Minister, polling shows Reform UK is struggling. The latest YouGov survey put Labour on 24 points, 2 points ahead of Nigel Farage's on 22. The first time a YouGov poll has put Labour ahead of Reform in more than a year. It's also Reform's lowest score since March 2025, with the party losing ground to the Conservatives. Ooh, boy. Okay. Interesting, interesting. And then anyway, Count Benface is like making the most of this because there is a lot of media on him. There's lots of videos. There's stuff of him dancing. There's stuff of him actually like going into factories and meeting with people. There's stuff with him in a newsroom, and everybody seems to be really happy and joyous to meet him. It's like, ah, it's like, why not a little whimsy? uh, there we go. Uh, let's see. What else do we have here? From a Kit Uncover in the news. Canadian Armed Forces holds major drone testing event with manufacturers. interesting there. Some news here from British Columbia that there may be the transfer of Crown land to Vancouver Island First Nations. Interesting. From the United States, Trump backed. Mike Lindell refuses to concede governor's race, alleges voting anomalies. Girl, that's all I'll say. Jeez. News: JD Vance asked Ukraine to halt strikes on tankers using Russian port. Okay. News: yes, I heard about this one. This is a report, I think, from the Canadian American Business Council that said that Canada could lose more than 100,000 jobs if CUSMA dies. We'll be talking about that a little bit today on the show. Oh, actually, we'll talk about that a lot on the show. That's going to be the theme of today's show, actually. Um, News: Nigel Farage said he didn't want to resign as MP, but was forced. No, you girl. You were not. You were not forced. News: Ontario line costs reach 34 billion, more than triple the original budget. That is leading certain people to then turn around and says, yeah, and there's no chance that this is going to happen with Alto. Aaron O'Toole being one of them. Yeah, thank you, conservatives. Always encourage us to dream big. The one project that you guys have a problem with going over budget. Jeez, my God. We're a G7 nation. We should have some high-speed rail. And if somebody could get on a project that does Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary, that would probably be good too. Just saying. A lot of people along that corridor. And I once had to get from Calgary to Red Deer in something like -40 in the middle of winter, of course, because it was so damn cold that the bus service was canceled that day, and there was no train. So it was for work. So that was a $200 taxi ride. Just saying. Um, the little high speed rail project wouldn't be so bad down there either. But we're gonna hopefully it will go ahead enough for the at least the Ottawa to Montreal line, that first little leg, and that will be operational. Uh, Once it's operational, that will people will see it happen, and they will see the promise, and they will see people take it up. And from that point on, uh, maybe that will start to assuage the naysayers. Let's put it that way. What else do we have here? News: Nova Scotia children under 14 will soon be banned from e-bikes. Okay, interesting. A lot of news about that, particularly about the batteries, because it seems that there may be people that are um, trying to alter the batteries in such a way so that they can be supercharged or that type of thing. And I think it was the Toronto fire chief was on the news the other day saying that one of the biggest, well, in his estimation, the biggest problem that there is for firefighters right now, and that really needs to be addressed, is how um, those standards for those types of batteries, because it seems that it's relatively unregulated, and a lithium fire is very, very different than a regular fire, right? Because it's chemical fire. So it's uh, it creates a situation that puts a lot of firefighters in danger. So it seems that there's a call on their part for better manufacturing standards for that. So yes, there's the safety and there's the security issue uh, in terms of how fast they can go and accidents and stuff like that. But there's also issues with the batteries, particularly people that want to if they're tampered with in a certain way to try to get more performance out of them. UK prosecutors urge US to keep Andrew and Tristan Tate jailed, arguing they are a flight risk and could intimidate witnesses. You think? Um, wow. News Bloc Québécois urges PM Carney not to sacrifice dairy farmers. That's also related to the topic that we're having today. There's some talk that with the trade stuff that we might be not close to a comprehensive deal because that's never, ever, 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 ever going to happen with this administration, I think, unless there's something absolutely critical going on for Donald Trump that he desperately needs someone that he can point to and is willing to swallow himself whole. But other than that, I doubt that that is happening. So, but there is talk, for example, of giving something to Donald Trump or to the Americans that they can consider as a win on dairy. The word that we are getting from our side is that it's something that maybe does not affect supply management. That said, politically speaking, strategically speaking, if you're the Bloc Québécois, they're not doing terribly, but they're on a slight decline um, in public opinion in the province of Quebec. And I just have a feeling that Monsieur Blanchette, I have a feeling that when he talks about Mark Carney every now and then, that it's there's an edge that makes it seem that there's a little something personal there, and I don't know what it is because they haven't had interactions or opportunities for interactions that would create a history. So there must be something about Carney that just particularly rubs Blanchette the wrong way. Yeah, we have an expression in French: "Il est pas capable de le sentir." He just, just can't stand the smell of him. Right? There's just something about because I get that I've been getting that like right from the debates and all that kind of stuff in the campaign. There's just a little edge uh, with Carney that wasn't there with Trudeau, right? Um, I think there was a basic respect of like fellow Quebecer there, even though they were on the wrong side, on the opposite sides of things. But there's a little edge there, a touch of Polyev, was particularly when it comes to competence and delivering. So I have a feeling, uh, again, the Bloc Québécois has nothing to lose, to frame any dairy concession, whether it affects supply management or not, as a threat to dairy farmers, particularly given that we have a by-election going in Chicoutimi-Le nothing has a rallying effect like claiming that a grave injustice or betrayal has been done to you. And since this stuff is supposed to be resolved, well, it's supposed to be resolved August 19th, 1 week from now, is the deadline by which these additional tariffs, I think these are the 50% ones, because apparently there's another bunch as well, because he announced two sets, another set, the other set's not being talked about a lot. But the 50% ones allegedly having to do with child labor, because Donald Trump cares about kids so all of a sudden. Right. Uh, ooh, um, there is, how would I put it? We are not going to arrive with this administration at anything that we can consider ever final. And the prime minister is on the record of saying something like, "We know we will have a good deal when we know we can trust those with whom we have signed it," or something of the sort. So I am getting the sense that the risk manager, banker, trade negotiating team in Canada, um, for Canada, uh, dealing with the world as it is, not as we would like it to be, accepting the reality being imposed upon us by the United States that there exists no reality in which we are going to have 0% tariffs. And again, if we're being honest, right, we've never had a tariff free deal with the United States. Anybody who has been following the softwood lumber file can tell you that, right? If you're watching Cursive Politics, the recent one with David Hurley and Corey Tenike and Scott Reed, because Jordan Leitnitz was on vacation, not participating in this one. Um, at one point there's a passage in there where I think it's Corey Tenike actually that was bringing it up and mentioning it, right? Like how many of these trade deals, of all the ones that we've had since this thing has started, right? How many of them have we had tariff free on lumber, right? Um, so right, uh, but there were systems and there were things that were agreed upon in terms of like quotas and stuff like that, and relatively well, relatively well. Not because we've been arguing about this forever, particularly softwood lumber. So I'm trying to, as unfair as it was, we had a state of somewhat normalcy that um, was somewhat predictable and reliable for a certain amount of time until somebody on the United States decided to change something, pretty much like we're experiencing now. But with people who at least appeared to have um, in their own framework of thinking a rational motive to do those things, and were rational in that you could try to negotiate something that could absorb a shock, right? Uh, there was a time that you could feel that if the country south of us was making a change for itself that adversely affected us, they still would not necessarily go out of their way to deny us an opportunity to do something to reduce the impact on ourselves, if that existed. With this administration, it's like, no, you will lie back and take it, and you will do not do anything to adapt, respond, or protect yourself. So it's a situation that has always been the case between us and the United States, if we are being really honest. But again, like everything with Donald Trump, on steroids. And just like without any pretense of dignity. Right? Or uh, order, right? Is an agent of chaos, right? Um, and that's, one of the reasons why we, since July of last year, have been saying that there is no deal to be had with Donald Trump. A lot of people are starting to come around and be saying that now. We've been saying for over a year he wants the drama more than he wants a deal. There's absolutely no reason a deal could not have been signed by now if we were dealing with serious people. Because it was supposed to just be a review, right? We made some changes. Let's look at those changes. How are they working out? Do we need to make any adjustments? Is there anything we missed? Were there any things that we did not intend that happened that, maybe we should fix? All good. Yeah. Okay. Next 16 years. Yeah. Here we go. Pat, pat, pat. Great. Shake hands. Do the photo op. Thank you very much. That's what it was supposed to be. Right? It wasn't renegotiating a trade agreement. It was reviewing some stuff. And it wasn't negotiating one from scratch because the term that I've been hearing, it seems that uh, we might be um, moving from an era of free trade to managed trade. And if we are moving to managed trade, well, then we need to do things in a different way, right? Adapt or die. So we're at a point, if you remember, about 3 weeks ago or so, it was announced that the United States would impose about 50% tariffs on about 60 nations, something having to do with child labor. Apparently, they did the study. They came back with conclusions that there were 60 nations on Earth that weren't doing enough to not, I guess, import or resell or whatever. I'm not sure what it is because, frankly, I don't really care because it's not a serious report. It's just a pretext. But having to do with child labor, and the United States is so against that, uh, for child labor, forced labor. Sorry. Um, the United States is so against that, even though, as we keep on mentioning on the show, it has a school to prison pipeline, and the people in those for profit prisons do work for almost nothing. And what they do make is sold. But let's just blow past the hypocrisy here. And, you know, all of this is a pretext because the original goal here was that Trump came in with a hypothesis in his mind about how tariffs could be used. It would seem there's some chatter that how you could use tariffs to try to replace income taxes. Which, if you want to set up a society like that, like for example in Canada, if we decided, we're not going to deduct any income taxes anymore, your take home pay is your take home pay, but GST is, the GST is a 17% on everything you buy, or 21%. So we're going to collect all our taxes from consumption, from your spending, but none from your income. You can set up a society like that, right? So he seems to have this mind here where you can uh, do it all on tariffs. So instead of taxing people on their income and stuff like that, you tax people again on what they purchase by putting tariffs on a whole bunch of stuff. Um, that seems to be the thing here, right? Um, Fine if you want to try that. Yes, that means that you're going to change your entire economy. Yes, that's going to have impacts on other countries. And you have full right to do that. A lot of people are going to hate you for it because you're disrupting the status quo that is working for everyone, but you have a right to do that. And Mark Carney has been acknowledging that. The problem is that in addition to doing that, right, is they're targeting specific industries to try to break them. Right? He wants it to make it so uh, unattractive to do cross-country business with the United States that the corporations will take the manufacturing plants that they built elsewhere to be able to serve the rest of the world, and bring them back to the United States. So the global manufacturing will be taking place there and distributed throughout the world. But also, do you see how he's like trying to? It's not like a little bit of pressure or whatnot, right? It's like the 50% tariffs, 25% tariffs here and there, right? Sometimes so high that all you would need is really a 10 or a 12, but it's 50, right? So you're like, it's just so many times over that everything over like 14 is materially insignificant. So you could turn around and says, okay, fine, I'll cut them from 50 to 30. It makes no material difference. Right? Ooh, thank you for the generosity. So we are not dealing with someone who's of good faith. Because throughout this entire process, when people brought these first tariffs to litigation, and we've got to remember that the first tariff of all that singled this out was the alleged fentanyl tariffs, because apparently we are a den of fentanyl. And, there's so much spilling over our borders of the United States that the US custom officials just can't get it all. Allegedly, we are to believe, right? We were singled out for extra special treatment on that one. That was the first salvo. Right? And the purpose of that was to scare the entire world. Hey, world, if we're willing to do this to our best friend, uh, don't think we'll have much more consideration for you. Right? There's always some type of purpose, right? Like he punches us to scare the rest of the world into submission. He punches us first and punches us hard. Then every time something doesn't go right at home and he needs a distraction, he punches us again. If we dare stand up, like Vashi Capellas pointed out to Ambassador Doucheface, it seems that you're mad that when you punched us, we didn't stay down. And you saw the whole tone of that interview change right in that moment, right? So there's a little resentment there. We need to be made an example of. And then there's all that humiliation talk. Annexation, governor, 51st state. We're going to acquire you through economic coercion. And now we're seeing the economic coercion, the attempts at it anyway. All that is going on in addition to wanting to change the way they wanted to do business, right? That's the first one is bad enough, right? Because it's somebody you all had an agreement, and somebody a part of the agreement goes, you know what? I'm unilaterally changing the agreement because I'm just not doing this anymore. What? What the? Why? But fine, okay. It's like, well, fine, okay. We'll adapt. We'll change. That part is bad enough. But all that additional stuff, that's just we're not having that. That's all unnecessary. So, and that's the part that the conservatives, when they're commenting on this, seemingly gleefully, seemingly like they want us to fail. That's the part of the story, that's the part of the narrative they always leave out. Just like with the Americans, right? They always leave out the part about when they punched us in the face first to give us a reason to do all those things that is, oh my God, these Canadians are just so unfair to us. Ay, ay, ay. So somebody brought those tariffs to court. Supreme Court said, not the fentanyl ones, but the other ones. I think they called the 232 ones, the IEFFA tariffs or something like that. Those ones, those were deemed uh, unconstitutional. And that whole thing, they have to repay that all the money that came into the treasury. That money has to go out now. But Donald Trump, overall objective is to sort of have a global 10% base tariff on everything, right? That's what that whole Liberation Day was. Some people got a little more, right? And that type of thing. But that's that whole kind of thing. So he can't do it with that type of tariff. And all he's been doing, and he's been having his team, is going through all the legal books and looking at for a whole bunch of different types of tariffs and how they work and whatnot, and then finding pretexts, right? There's tariffs that haven't been used in a long time, like the recent ones that are coming up, the Smoot-Hawley ones. Um, you they haven't been used in quite a long time. So Donald Trump couldn't use those ones, defiantly said that he's going to be doing it anyway, found another tariff that he could slap on us. And clearly he did it right away soon after the decision. So clearly he knew he was going to lose because that part of the research had already been done, right? And then slapped them on. But those ones had a maximum, I think it is, of 180 days or something, or 120 days. I'm not sure, but there was a time limit and they expired. So when Donald Trump 1 month ago said, says, I'm going to get 50% tariffs on all of you, and you got 30 days to try to convince me to do whatever, right? Those 30 days, and that date was not an accident. August 19th is the date that the tariffs he imposed to make up for the tariffs that the Supreme Court of the United States deemed unconstitutional expired. There's a method to this madness. The tariffs that he's got now, one of the cool little things about them that I found out yesterday, listening to some people far more educated than I am on this particular matter, is that it allows him to impose tariffs on states as well as other countries, which means, probably in his mind, it allows him to impose tariffs on provinces, specifically and directly, rather than just the nation. And he seems to be really upset about booze, and it just so happens to be that the three provinces that have been the most steadfast about leaving booze off the shelves are Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. There's Manitoba, there's New Brunswick as well. But those three are the provinces that are the most affected by the tariffs. If you look at the sort of, put it all together, what the sort of general tariff rate on the United States, from the United States on anything coming out of Canada those are different for each province. Alberta and Saskatchewan, oil and potash, two things that the United States desperately needs, which is why these things keep on getting exempt from every time they try to punch us in the face. They're facing very, 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 very little change to their economy at the moment as a result of these tariffs. Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia are having a much harder time. New Brunswick, specifically with the forestry sector, is having a pretty tough time. Manitoba with pork exports, but that's be a little more related to China. Still having a bit of a tough time. However, with these new tariffs that are coming in, all the ones that he has planned, the effective tariff rate on British Columbia would be the highest one in the nation at about 12.5%. David Eby also happens to be a premier who has said there's no chance in hell that booze will be going on the shelves. Some of the things that we are hearing is that the prime minister may be willing to ask the premiers to do something about booze on the shelves in exchange for something. Whether the premiers will be willing to play ball is a whole other thing. Of course, that does give the prime minister a little bit of cover if the premiers don't, for him to go back to the table and say, "Guys, you got to offer me more, man. Can't get my premiers to agree. That's not enough." The premier of Quebec has indicated that she'd be willing to consider certain things if in exchange for others. I would assume, given the trustworthiness that has been put into evidence by the other party at the negotiating table, that there would be a clause that should the United States not follow through on any of its commitments, the booze comes back off the shelves. Right? That's a concession by the way, if we're talking concessions, that we can make rather easily because it is no cost to us, right? It hurts them, but it's no cost to us, really, to put it back on the shelves, unlike us imposing a quota on ourselves or that type of stuff. If we're talking about managed quit trade, we might be moving to quotas. And then in that case, it will be, you know, like quotas for the United States with regard to supply management. Are they set high enough that essentially we can't reach them? So Donald Trump can go and say, I put these limits, I got these quotas, but they're not really material. Because that's what's happening with the dairy argument, right? The Americans are saying, like this, oh my God, they got these quotas, but the United States have never even come close to reaching the plateau where these quotas would come into an effect. They exist in the deal, but they are merely theoretical. If you set a quota in a deal, but the quota is so high that it'll never be reached, eh, yes, if you do reach it, yes, it's the letter of the law, it comes into force. But if it's never going to come into force, it's a theoretical notion in real life, right? Those are concessions we could be happy to give to allow him to save face. Problem is that McCartney can't come back on the Canadian side after that and say, "Hey, don't worry, we didn't give him anything because, well, everything that you say on the mic, they can hear too, and then react to." So it means to be. We are probably in the negotiating room trying to give them some wins that they can go out and crow our wins that are materially insignificant, a bit like we doing on the bridge, right? It's 50% of the net revenues after operating expenses. Right? But then when we found out when we looked into that article in the National Post about the structure of the deal that Stephen Harper made, right, where there's no income generating opportunities by not having, fuel stations or duty free on either side, that we are not collecting rent for the space that the Americans are using, and there's we're not collecting property taxes for it, and we put a deal in there that we're not going to collect them for about 100 years. Well, all of those things make the bridge more expensive to operate year after year, right? So, okay, yeah, it's not net of operating and interest, debt servicing, paying down the $6.4 billion for the bridge. But there are so many more operating costs that would not be there in normal times. So if you're looking at this and you're a risk manager and you're saying, "Oh my God, there's all this stuff," well, fine, yeah, sure, let's do it. Just net operating costs. That's fine because we're never going to reach it. And if we do reach it, that means the bridge is making so damn much good business that all the other impacts of the economy from all that trade is it doesn't matter, right? With that bridge and thing, I have to issue a gentle correction on myself for something I said because the deal, right, is for 5% of the value of the bridge or what we put in to build it was 6.4 uh, billion. 5% of that is 320 million. But I think on the show, said that the United States could collect up to $320 million a year for 15 years. No, no, they can collect a maximum of $320 million over a period of 15 years. That $320 million is a cap on how much they can rake in on the 50% cut of the tolls. There's billions of dollars there's $1 billion of trade a day at least going across that border, if not more, versus $320 million over 15 years. Yeah, let Donald Trump crow that he had a big win. But the problem is that we can't at our end going and saying, "Don't worry, guys, wink." The government can't do that. One, not only because the United States can hear us, but also because the conservatives would probably jump all of that and go, "See, see, look what they're doing, look what they're doing." And draw attention to it because they're so helpful. Um, so yeah, you want to you want to be uh you have to be circumspect, which means you're opening yourself up to being attacked. Uh, you're opening yourself you're up for the main chatter in the media to be the framing that the United States is going to put on it. And then you're opening yourself to attack from the opposition party in Canada, choosing to believe what the United States says over what the government of Canada says, which it has been doing over and over and over and over again. And there's a limit. You got your hands tied behind your back as to how much you can defend yourself because, again, you can't have your narrative for your domestic audience being, don't worry, guys, they think they got us, but they didn't really. We outsmarted them because that gives them a reason to slap another tariff on us. So that's the disadvantage, right? When we're talking about liberals and their communications and sometimes how they're terrible on this particular file, that's where the rub is for them. Now, stuff like, having that talking about the potential condo conversion thing in British Columbia and coming out and musing aloud about it before there was anything finalized and whatnot. Um, that doesn't fall into this category when you have problems with liberal comms, right? That's a whole other set of issues that they really need to deal with. But this one, right, is is the box that they have been put in, right? That's the constraint. That's the thing holding their hands back when people say, like, why aren't you just like throwing a haymaker, right? Oh, elbows down. Where are your elbows now? That's part of the reason why elbows up doesn't mean elbows up your nose 24/7, right? Sometimes the elbow has to go up. It's like, no, we won't be doing that. F off. But sometimes the elbow is like, oh, did that happen? Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't intend that. Mm. Right? Uh, hello, PNC Bio. Nice to see you. I miss you too. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we were able to be here early enough today to have you join us. Thank you so much for being there. You are missed. I always love your commentary in the chat. Um, let's see. And Kit Terry Gone By. I received it on good authority. Thank you, Kit Elaine, that you are Kit Tavi T. So we do know each other. Hello. Ah, man. All right. So Donald Trump is trying to make happen through the back door what he couldn't do constitutionally through the front door. He's trying to use a whole bunch of different tariffs to try to create that 10% thing that he wanted. He's going to do it by hook or by rook. All right. Um, so if we and if our trade negotiating team, unlike the conservatives, who still seem to want to live in a world where there exists a tariff-free deal with Donald Trump, other than becoming the 51st state, and that Pierre Poilievre somehow has the magic skills that even a Mark Carney would not have to make that happen. With the caveat here that no country has struck a zero tariff deal with the United States yet, and every country that has struck an early deal with the United States has seen that deal been somewhat obliterated or have them being hit with additional tariffs afterwards when they have done anything that has displeased Donald Trump. So, once again, when we realized way back in July 2025 that there was no point in pursuing a quick deal anymore because the goal of pursuing a quick deal was to say, okay, you know what, there's this disruption, let's address it, let's go give everything we got at it, address it, boom, get it out of the way, and give market circuit certainty again for the next 4 years. That was the thinking, but that was before everyone realized that Trump 2.0 was somewhat different than Trump 1.0. And one of the ways that he was different is that now is Donald Trump wasn't afraid of ragging the puck this time around. Right? The longer the uncertainty, the lesser the foreign investment, the more the economy crumbles. In this case, it's in Donald Trump's interest, if he wants to break you, to draw out the pain. So that's what's happening here. That's why we're doing this pivot to try and shore up as much on another side, on the international side, what we are losing on the North American continent. Because it may not be a one for one thing, right? But a lot of this is about buying time. We're ragging the puck too, because we know that there are pressures in the United States. So, and additionally, we should say there are pressures on the United States that we did not foresee going into this, right? I remember when we had Kit Hugh on a while ago, um, stating that he would not have been surprised if by August of last year, the United States would have tried something military esque on us. And instead, they went to the route of Venezuela and what they're doing with Cuba and Greenland. But at that time, we did not know they were going to launch a forever war in Iran and botch it so spectacularly. We didn't know that they were going to show us through their negotiations that they are willing to make these big, big demands at first and settle for less and less and less. By drawing it out, we did not know that they were willing to negotiate themselves into less by running their mouths. We did not know that they were going to prosecute this war in such a way that they were going to cause huge depletions to their oil reserves and military stockpiles, particularly missiles. We didn't know that they were going to so incompetently wage an economic war on so many fronts at one time that they would send their bond market reeling, right? All these things are points of leverage for us. We did not know. Well, we did not. We probably did know this one that the United States, the president of the United States, personal performance and popularity and charisma was going to be such that he would probably be somewhere in the toilet by midterms. We didn't know that one was going to happen, but of all of those things happening, that's the one we would have put the most money on. Let's just uh, let's just say that one. Okay, that one, yeah, was a pretty safe bet. Um, so yeah, we have some leverage. There are some time bombs there that we can be waiting to have go off by buying time as well. Um, but this August 19th date for the coming into effect of these particular tariffs was not an accident. And one of the reasons we know they are somewhat serious about these tariffs is because the United States really, 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 really needs the money. Also, Kit Nunakala asks how many jobs we lost in the USA or Mexico. We're going to get into that. They also can't afford to lose the jobs. because that recent employment number from the United States that showed that the unemployment rate dropped by 0.1%, that looks like a good headline number. But when you dig deeper into the numbers, there's a different story here, and one that is not good for the United States. Get PNC Bio. He made a deal with Saudi Arabia and changed it the next effing day. Absolutely. We all saw that. The entire world saw that, right? By watching him negotiate with other countries, we learned a lot about how he negotiates. We've adapted. Now, remember, one of the things I keep on saying, gets and cups, because conservatives have been out there again, demanding that, tell us what your plan is and all that kind of stuff. Once again, I repeat, Canada has some of the best trade negotiators in the world. Good trade negotiators never negotiated in public. Almost everything that we are hearing about the trade negotiations in terms of things that are on the table and all that kind of stuff have been coming from the United States. The United States usually say things for domestic consumption or to disrupt or to divide and conquer here. The United States administration has never been a reliable source. On reliability, the Canadian government has been much more reliable than the United States by any objective standard. Why anyone in Canada would believe the words of the United States administration, currently as it is, over the word of the government of Canada is totally beyond me. But some choose to do so because there are reasons political, not logical, not rational, to do so. We are tight lipped. We are negotiating in private when there are things to tell us, like, for example, we have some outlines of a proposal that might be ready to be presented to the President of the United States, maybe around the 17th or something like that, to give him a day or two to think about it. And like I said, that might be enough for him to say, we've been negotiating with Canada and they've been nasty, so nasty, very tough negotiators, very tough. Yes, but we're making some progress. We're making great, great progress. Yes, in Canada, they want to deal very badly, right? They need this deal more than we do. They want to deal so, so badly. Like Iran. We're getting closer and they want to deal badly. So, so badly. So I'm going to extend. Taco munch, 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 munch. Taco munch, 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 munch. The deadline for 2 weeks. Listen, if it's more than 2 weeks, we were getting one hell of a win because with Trump, it's always 2 weeks. I do this. And, or maybe he's feeling magnanimous and generous. And since we're making such good progress, I'm announcing that for Canada specifically, the tariffs won't be 50%, but maybe 15%. And let's see if we can maybe get some lower. Because we love Canada. I love the people of Canada. Oh my God. Kid piece in bio. I don't see any point in signing a deal. You might as well be signing it with the fish on the other side of the contract. Yeah. It's like, do not make a concession now that you can't claw back later. Right? So there's probably a good reason to believe that any concessions that we are going to be making at this point are going to be somewhat symbolic or something that we are getting something concrete in exchange of. Word on the tweet is that the Americans would probably be willing to sign some concessions on steel and aluminum, which would be great. But to be totally honest, we don't need them as much. Steel, maybe. Aluminium, not so much, because the province of Quebec has the hydroelectricity advantage when it comes to aluminium. And the Canadian aluminum industry has been very, 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 very good at pivoting to European markets. That's one where the United States is noticing some of the things that we said, right? If the United States keeps this up much longer, we're going to diversify and we're going to be signing 20 to 30-year contracts. When the United States wakes up from this fever dream and says, okay, good Canada, sorry, sorry, sorry. We didn't mean it, that kind of stuff. We do want to sign that deal for the aluminium. Sorry, it's like our stockpiles have been committed for the next 30 years. We got nothing for you. Unless you want to start a whole new mining operation and would like to fund that totally from your pocket. Um, Sorry, we got nothing for you. We had to make choices. It's not personal, it's just business. Sorry. That's going to happen. And given that military stockpiles are pretty depleted, they might need some aluminium. And repeatedly punching yourself in the face by adding God knows how many more much money to the purchase of aluminium than you need to when you need it to actually defend yourself because you're in a war. Yeah. Yeah, hi, United States. Yeah, I bet you would like to reduce those tariffs that you put yourself on aluminum. But what was it that you said? Yeah, when you clean up a mess that you made, you don't get credit for it. So thank you for recognizing that you needed to stop punching yourself in the dick on aluminum. Great. Now, we don't consider that a concession. So now that you've done that, let's talk about what you're willing to give now. Because that's a two-way frickin' street, right? It's like, you opened the door, Mr. US Trade Representative. Don't blame us for walking through it. That's why you gotta think about these strategies beforehand, because sometime in a negotiation can come a situation where you, teach the party on the other side of the table that they have a few more moves available to them that are clearly deemed acceptable because you use them. Gotta be very careful when you choose one of those moves in a negotiation. Kid Saucy here says preparing for the end of CUSMA would be wise even if nothing happens to it. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Uh, we have here, Carol, you can lower the numbers. We have wiggle room, indeed. One of the reasons I do have a little bit of a problem with quotas, and that's one of the reasons if we're going to do that, they have to be set so high, really, that we'll never meet them, is because it's one of those things like that abortion debate. Once you acknowledge that the fetus has rights, then you can come in and try and what if this, what if that, and try to slowly take away small rights. Because same thing as once you agree to a quota, so you agree that there should be a quota. So now let's start quibbling about the amount and see how much we could lower it and lower it and lower it, right? Because you've agreed to the starting premise. So that's one of the things. But again, we can't force the people on the other side to also agree to things that they do not want to agree. Kid Grace here says, regarding quotas that are in CUSMA, however, Canadian dairy buying them up, so US doesn't have access. Probably give them access as was agreed to in CUSMA. Exactly. Exactly. PNC Bio here says we might sign a deal that they can have unlimited access to the dairy market for all on the non-subsidized US farmers or some other deal that's absolutely meaningless. Yes, exactly. See, that's what I mean. When you understand the industry and you're someone who reads the full terms of a contract and that you know that our side is doing that, it changes a lot. Kid Linda, it would be really funny if we wrote a deal with convoluted language that just means we're going to do what we've already been doing and make it look like the US won something. That might also be what happens. Because, Kid Grace, I don't see a deal happening. Nothing that's meaningful, right? We might, like I said, the United States with Iran, they're getting to a point where they're going to have to accept pretty much whatever and then try to wallpaper over it, presenting it as some type of big win. The United States may be negotiating itself into the same position here with us at some point. Breen says Premier Mark Carney also needs to keep trying as part of the job. Many Canadians still feel a deal can be had, and he needs to be seen as trying, right? He can't take the position that the Conservatives are saying, no more concessions. You got to be making some concessions. There's a battle for the public opinion here, right? Canada is much more respected in the United States right now than Trump is. So when Trump is attacking Canada, the reaction of the citizens of the United States, for the most part, is, "What the hell are you doing that to Canada for, man? They're our friends, aren't they?" Right? So if we keep on appearing on American TV as people that say, "Yeah, sure, we're willing to make that type of concession. We're willing to talk about that," that helps us. That helps us with public pressure coming from the United States on the president to not do something stupid. Um, KPNCBIO, I can totally see us signing a deal that is essentially CUSMA in restated language like we did with CUSMA compared to NAFTA, although CUSMA opened up energy exports for us. Yes, that was one of the good things for us. It made it such that we can start exporting oil out west because the one for one thing was removed. There was a clause in NAFTA that if we produced let's say if we had to give 60% of what we produced to the United States, if we found a way to produce 25% more, 60% of that 25% had to necessarily go to the United States. That doesn't exist anymore. That obligation. That was a big thing that we won that didn't get a lot of play, but that is one of the reasons that is allowing the Trans Mountain out west to do so well and creating the possibility for a second one to be built because now we can extract more. Technically, now we could, if we had there was a new greenfield project and then we brought it up, because everything from that could go west, and not a drop of it would have to go contractually to the United States. So that allows us to, over time, if this was an industry that was to grow a lot, to have more and more a greater share of our trade with countries not United States. So that was a good thing for us. Grace, this Green Lion thing has to be stopped now. It's a soft power play for takeover. Absolutely. So yeah, you guys are really chatting there. I can't wait, and I'm very, very much behind actually in the chats with you. Um, so let's take a look at some of the reasons here for which Canada has a lot more leverage. The first one is you're looking at, I mean, the first one, there's a lot of things that I mentioned before that I've just thrown in there, but this is a little bit more organized. The United States, right? The one thing that is worse than rampant inflation is stagflation. And the United States is in a situation at the moment where stagflation is becoming a very real reality. There are three things that you need for stagflation: one, high inflation; two, low economic growth; and three, low or even like negative uh, employment. And the United States has got two down pat already and is really working on the third. With high inflation, right? The consumer price index for July is supposed to be coming out soon for the United States economy, but economy watchers will be looking to the impact of the war in Iran on energy prices and the cost of goods in general. But the last numbers that we got for U.S. inflation uh, is way higher than ours, right? The United States headline inflation rose 3.4% year over year in July 2026. And there are certain core, uh, you know, in May, it was at 4.2 when things got really bad at the start of the war. The price of oil has sort of gone up and down and, wavered in that whole period. But yeah, headline CPI 3.4, whereas in Canada, right, the headline CPI was 2.8. So that's 0.6 difference. But in addition, right, when you take out the volatile elements, right, we are at 2.2. Target is 2. We're at a very steady annual pace. Um, our food inflation, sorry, not our food inflation, our inflation is pretty much in check. And again, in that data I brought from you by Mr. Winkler from Bloomberg, there was those graphs that were showing how inflation was working in various countries. So we have a much better situation than the United States, and they do have high inflation, and there is nothing in the forecast for the United States in particular that is indicating that they will get inflation under control anytime soon. Low economic growth, latest data came in stating that in the second quarter of this year, Canada had recorded economic growth such that if it were annualized, it would come in at 3.4%, which is something leaders would love to have. Now, how long we will be able to maintain this, given that, again, how the world is swinging, right? You can have 3.41. We're living in a world where you can have 3.4 one quarter and 1.5 the next, right? Um, because there's a big shock or oil prices just spike up or something. But these are fantastic numbers, and they are certainly not anywhere what the conservatives were telling us a few months ago when they were claiming that we were in the middle of a full-blown liberal recession. In the United States, however, their numbers have come in at 1.5% annualized. 3.4 for us, 1.5. We're almost growing at a rate almost 2% faster than the United States at the moment. And that 1.5 missed expectations. Howard Nuttlick, the Commerce Secretary, had promised 5% growth this year. What do you think is going to happen in the midterms when clips of him turning around and saying 5%, 5%, and we're looking at 1.5? That's not going to help. And of that 1.5% growth, right? So far this year, right? Last quarter came in at 1.5. For the year, it's coming in at 1.8 so far. Wonder what it is for Canada. Um, just so far this year, because that second quarter was gangbusters, but the first quarter was lower than the United States. So just want to see on the space of a full year here. So yes, 0 annualized growth quarter one, advanced estimate 3.4. Okay, so let's say divide it in two then. So 1.7. So United States for the year so far has grown at what, 1.8? We've grown at 1.7. But we're on an upward trend with the 3.4 this quarter, and they're on a downward trend of 1.5 that missed estimates. So of the 1.8% US GDP growth recorded this year so far, 1.24% of it comes from AI related businesses, and 0.55 of it comes from the rest of the economy. So take out AI, and the United States grew at 0.55% this year so far. That's not the hottest economy in the world. In other words, if it weren't for the AI boom, US economic growth would be at about 0.5%. 40% of the S&P instead of 40% of the S&P and index, and 73% of earnings growth, and 93% of the United States GDP at the moment is based on the capital expenditure of AI. Or 93% of United States GDP growth, I'm thinking here, sorry, not just the entire GDP growth, is based on the capital expenditure of AI. So that's high inflation, that's low economic growth. The third one is employment. Now, the current unemployment number in the United States is higher than some would like it, but not high enough for it to be classified as officially high unemployment. I think it came in at 4.1%. Ours is significantly higher than that. Most economists would say that the current number is within a healthy range. Even though the unemployment rate decreased by 0.1% in the United States, it came after a net loss of jobs and as a result of a year-long continuing decrease in labor participation rate, which is the percentage of the working age population that is either employed or looking for work. It's the lowest it has been in the last 50 years, save the COVID years when it hit 60.2%. It is currently sitting at 61.5%, which generally speaking means people think that the economy is so bad that they are not even looking, according to Diane Swak, who is the chief economist for KPMG USA. Quote, it's still difficult to find work. We know the duration of unemployment went down a little bit in July, which is encouraging, but we need a lot more of that. There are about 1.8 million people who have been unemployed more than 27 weeks in any given month. And in the month of July in particular, that's come down a little bit, but that's very elevated and it's much higher than it was pre-pandemic. Okay. Um, when you're looking at the employment numbers, and like I said, the unemployment number for the USA, I believe, came in at 4.1%. And for Canada, I believe it is in the 6% range, 6.4. So both of them have come down 1.1%. But in Canada, it came down because we added 75,000 net positions. The United States unexpectedly shed 23,000 non-farm role pay positions. In the United States, the labor force contracted by 264,000 active workers in that month, which means the labor participation rate dropped to 61.4%, which is the lowest since 2021. Right? For us, that 6.4% is the lowest unemployment level since July 2024. That's a 2-year milestone for us. It was driven by wholesale, retail, finance, and construction. And the unemployment rate for ages 15 to 24 youth dropped to 12.6%, which is it's still high, clearly, but it was significantly higher before. And there's been some steady decreases in that. Measurement differences. Statistics Canada uses broader criteria than the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. So adjusted to concepts, Canada's rate is closer to 5.5% if we are compared to the United States. All right. So our rate is 6.4, but we have a broader range. So if we measured the same way the United States measured, we'd be in at 5.5% unemployment to the United States 4.1. Now, the labor participation rate is the thing here that is particularly critical because one, it's a sign of confidence in your economy, right? But how well it's working for you. Now, for the United States, there's a very interesting trend going on. Hopefully, I can bring this up on the screen for you, kids and cubs, and you will have a chance to see this for yourself and follow along here. I believe this is it here. Okay, I'm not sure. Hopefully, I can make it slightly bigger for you. Let's try that. Hopefully, that's a little better. Okay, yes, it is a little better. So this is the labor participation rates in the United States at the moment. And if you start from bottom to top here, you'll see in August 2025, it was 62.3%. It hit a high of 62.5 in September 2025 and November 2025. There's no data in October 2025, remember, because there was the federal government shutdown. So, but over time, so 62.5 in November 2025, and this monthly, 62.4, 62.1, 62, 61.9, 61.8, 61.8, 61.5, 61.4. This is a continuing decline. in the labor participation rate in the United States. Steady decline. More and more and more people are losing hope. Now, if we look at the equivalent for Canada, well, uh, listen, it's not glowing numbers, right? But there is a significant difference. Number one, uh, our number starts off way higher. Way back in August 2025, it was at 65.3%. And basically, between August 2025 and July 2026, it has vacillated between 64.9 and 65.4, so within a 0.5% range, and currently sits at 65.1. The United States sits at 61.4. That 3.7% difference doesn't seem like a lot, but when it comes down to dollars and cents, 3.7% of your population, that's a lot of income. That's a lot of tax dollars. That's a lot of economic activity. So our job market is more solid than that of the Americans at the moment. So we're doing better on inflation. We're doing better on jobs. We're doing better. We're not. We're doing better in the second quarter on economic growth. Uh, Overall for the year, we're 0.1% behind them. And we started off with the first quarter of zero. So we made up all that ground. Now, with regard to CUSMA specifically, 1.4 million American jobs and 2.5 million Canadian jobs depend on bilateral relationship. The new economic report that we were talking about that was released by the Canadian American Business Council shows that if CUSMA is successfully renegotiated, 98,000 Canadian jobs and 137,000 American jobs would be created in 2027. However, the breakdown of CUSMA would result in the loss of 102,000 Canadian jobs and 214,000 American jobs. Now, in the United States, there's also the issue of consumer sentiment. It seems to be going up a little bit. The University of Michigan US July Consumer Sentiment Index was unexpectedly revised upwards to a 5-month high of 55.2, stronger than expectations on a downward revision to 54.0. Again, in the United States, like in Canada, the consumer is doing a lot to bolster the economy. Now, there's a global growth context in which all of this is happening because one of the world's largest markets is China. And when China takes a dip economically, it does affect global economic activity. And it says here that in China, there was a weaker than expected um, economic news that was negative for global growth prospects after the July manufacturing price managers index in China fell to 49.2%, which was weaker than expectations of 50.1 and also a 5-month low. Also, the July non-manufacturing producers manufacturing index fell to 49%, weaker than expectations of 40 weaker than expectations and the weakest level in 3.5 years. So it seems that there might be slowdown going on in China as well. Um, so there you go. Um, Activity on the Gordie Howe International Bridge has started, so that's a plus for both of us. I'm not sure if that's still in place. There are certain trucks that still can't cross because there's certain things that have to be uh, done with regard to setting up the toll paying for the passes or something like that. So there's not as much activity as can be on as could be on it now until certain companies set it up because they don't want them to be using the Ambassador Bridge while they have, let's say, prepaid tolls. Sorry, crossing the Gordie Howe Bridge while they have prepaid tolls on the Ambassador Bridge already and want to, use out their accounts or something like that, or use, you know, There is a risk depending on the amount of traffic that goes on the other bridge that the companies that are paying the tolls would be paying the tolls on both bridges, for example. Um, so they don't want that to happen. So there's a delay in some of the traffic. Pedestrian and bicycle traffic across the bridge opened on August 5th, I believe it was. So that is happening. If you happen to be doing that, by the way, on the Canadian side, uh, even if you're not planning to go onto the US side, you still need to bring your passport for when you're on the bridge. That's apparently recommended. Just putting that out there. So that's happening, and we'll see what happens there. But like I said, with regards to that deal, the maximum that the United States can get out of that deal is about $21 million a year. So if people want to call that a huge cave and a concession, I guess they can. But that's what the math comes out to. An average about $21 million per year, if that can even be achieved for the first 15 years. Now, here's where things start to get interesting with regard to the debt. This is one of the pressures that the United States has upon it. The Congressional Budget Office is projecting that the federal deficit in the United States will top $2 trillion for the first time this year. That it will come in at around $2.1 trillion. This is more red ink that was forecasted. With about a month and a half to go in the fiscal year, income and payroll tax deductions are up, but government spending has grown even faster. Meanwhile, corporate tax receipts are down from a year ago, and tariff revenue are well short of earlier forecasts after the Supreme Court struck down some of his earlier tariffs and forced him to refund the money. Spending on Social Security and Medicare has grown with an aging population, and interest payments have jumped about $100 billion this year due to higher interest rates and the ballooning federal debt. In addition, the U.S. credit score is no longer top tier. It has been on a downhill slide that has started in earnest as far back as 2019. Um, that's a massive pressure to the United States. Uh, if you're looking as a debt relative to the size of the economy, um, in both countries, um, the gross government debt to GDP ratio stands at 124% for the United States and 113.5 for Canada. Right? So um, we are in a better standing on that front, uh, but we um, are in a better situation to be servicing that debt as well. Um, Combined federal provincial net debt is 75.4% of GDP. Combined net debt is predicted to hit 2.44 trillion for the fiscal year, roughly doubling since 2007. That's for us in Canada. And the general government net debt is 16.5% of GDP, which is a significantly lower number reported by Statistics Canada, which includes the massive financial assets held by the Canada Pension Plan and the Quebec Pension Plan. So, uh, we have debt, but we also have um, a decent amount of assets. In the United States, the debt servicing costs says net interest payments surged to 3.2% of GDP, costing over $1 trillion annually and now outstripping national defense spending. Yikes. Um, wow. That is something I'm learning right now, actually, as I'm reading it. Wow. I had no idea that the interest payments on the debt in the United States now outstrip national defense spending. And when you consider how much the United States spends on national defense, that is outstanding. Wow. Okay. I'm shocked. I am really shocked. Ah, wow, okay. In Canada, uh, the Parliamentary Budget Officer projects federal debt servicing costs will inch up to 2.1% of GDP by 2030-31 in Canada as existing bonds mature and rolled over at current market rates. So again, we are looking again at a significant difference, 3.2% versus 2.1%. We are again in a better position, right? Sometimes in a trade war, it's about who can take a punch and how long you can take them. Lis- We are entering this trade war in a better uh, position. With regard to interest rates, the FOMC in the United States, right? Donald Trump has chosen a new chair for the Federal Reserve, but you have to understand that it's not the chair of the Federal Reserve that makes the interest rate decisions. It's a council in it, right? The FOMC, of which the chair of the Fed is not necessarily the chair of the FOMC. And Jerome Powell, that Donald Trump wanted to get rid of so badly, still sits on the FOMC. So even with his choice of Fed chair, not only did Trump not get a lowering of interest rates, but three members of the FMOC actually dissented from the recent decision to stay pat by voting to raise rates. Worse yet, for Trump, the markets are um, it discounting a 68% chance of a 0.25 or 25 basis point rate hike at the next meeting on September 15th or 16th. So when the decision, like I said, the decision came down, there were three dissenters. There's also what's everything that's going on with regard to Japan, and it's one of the countries that holds, I believe, holds the greatest share, or the international country that holds the greatest share of U.S. debt. Uh, what it is doing, raising its central bank is raising interest rates. The government of Japan is now buying more of its own bonds, which has changed. Um, uh, Currency levels in the sense of the United States buying some Japanese uh, um, bonds in order to stabilize currency rates. There also been, if you check out House of L, uh, recent moves where about I think 89% of the world banks are deciding to increase their gold supplies, increase their gold reserves. Korea, in particular, which hadn't increased its gold reserves in quite a long time, has decided to make a purchase. China is making significant purchase, which seems to be sending the message out there that there are more and more countries that are not considering, or that are considering that it's less and less likely that the United States dollar should be considered the world currency reserve, the world reserve currency. Sorry, I should say. So, selling dollars and buying gold, and some nations wanting to store the gold, not in the United States. These are things that are happening in the background that usually are pretty important signals. They're not things we necessarily hear about all the time, but they're very important signals. Um, so we talked about uh, not only is the uh, not only is a greater percentage of GDP going to debt servicing in the United States than in Canada, but also because of the change in bond yields. The interest rates that both countries are paying to service their debt. Um, in the United States, um, uh, the average blended interest rate across all maturities combined is 3.44%, which is up 1.58% from a few years ago. In Canada, the average blended interest rate is 2.6% on general government market debt. So, not a full percent difference, but still a significant difference. We can borrow money, for far less. And if we are borrowing money to invest in capital projects that have the potential to be revenue generating, that's good debt, and we can get it at a better price, significantly better price. Actually, speaking of that, uh, today is the day. I am renewing my mortgage, kids and cubs. It's been 5 years since we've been here at the Beaver Lodge. Today, 5 years ago today, we put the key in the door, and this was ours. So, yay! So I've been doing a lot about interest rates actually the last little bit as we've been renegotiating all that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, right. Let me put it this way. Let me just check that number again. Um, the United no, that's okay. I was going to make a claim, and that was not going to be true. Um, but let me put it this way. Um, it is not costing me when I'm going to be renewing my mortgage. It's not costing me greater than 1% more, less than 1% more to service my debt on my house than the United States is paying to service its national debt. Mm? Mm? Kids, saucy, quiet revenge for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yes, wasn't it like just a few days ago that was uh, the day, this day in history, the United States dropped a bomb. So yeah, thank you, Kit Tabby G. Happy home anniversary! Yay! Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, Kid PNC Bio. Yeah. The problem is Donald Trump will happily let everyone else in the US take a punch. The US populace has a notoriously glass jaw, however. Indeed. Yes. Some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice I am willing to make. So the cost to service the debt is higher for the United States. And then when we're looking at the bond yields, well, we just took a look at those the other day. The US bond yields go, the 30 years climbed over 5% again, right? Last time we checked, I think it was even over past 5.2. Currently standing at 5.22, a little down from today. So yesterday was at 5.235 yesterday. 5.5 for the 30 year is starting to be considered the danger zone. And when we were talking about the United States being close to the danger zone, when we reported on that back around May 19th, uh, the bond rate had hit a high of 5.1970. Since then, it has hit a high of 5.2810. That is trending in the absolute wrong direction. And it seems that 5.5 is some type of psychological barrier that could potentially cause some type of sell off. Now, if you're in the negotiating room with your number one trading partner threatening to blow everything up and are serious about that, what do you think is going to happen to your bond yields? What do you think that the global economy, global world is going to think about the stability of your economy? The United States doesn't have as much leverage as it thinks it does, and we have a whole lot more than we think we do. And the United States, fortunately for us, handed us a whole bunch of additional leverage by making really silly decisions for itself that only put a squeeze on it. So we have all this financial stuff, then we have the defense reality, right? The United States had about 2,300 interceptor missiles at the start of the war on Iran and now has about 800. There was news a couple of weeks ago going out there saying that the United States was looking to lower aluminum and perhaps steel tariffs in order to be able to replace because they can't replace the munitions fast enough. And what has happened in terms of global presence and force projection in the United States? Well, you've got countries, like I said, making decisions about their currency reserves, buying more gold, selling US dollars, and storing their gold not in the United States so that they make sure they can have access to it if they need it. Because the United States be like that these days. Um, that's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. Also, not a good sign when Saudi Arabia and Turkey, two of your very closest allies, Turkey being a fellow member of NATO and the largest military in Europe, and Saudi Arabia, your basically go to partner in the Gulf nations, decide to sign a mutual defense treaty pact with Pakistan that happens to also be a nuclear nation. We've just watched Saudi Arabia sign a deal with the United States. The United States turned around and said, hey, this deal is not in place unless you sign the Abraham Accords, putting a new condition after the deal has been signed. Saudi Arabia not being able to stomach that, and Saudi Arabia deciding, hey, Pakistan, we know we signed a mutual agreement not too long ago, under which we came under your mutual protection. Now, hey, with Turkey, let's bring it in and let's sign a three-nation pact and let's advertise it to the world as some type of template that maybe other nations would want to join. The type of pact in which an attack against one is an attack against all. Gee, what does that remind anybody of? They're selling your currency, they're buying gold, they're not storing gold in your country, and they're forming mutual defense pacts, creating another type of NATO that doesn't include you with other nations that have nuclear power. Things are going great defense wise. You got about 800 interceptor missiles left. And people are wondering, how do you know that? Well, because the United States is pretty transparent and when it purchases stuff, right? The orders are there. So if you follow the orders and you follow how many have been used, if you can rely on the data that's been put out there, you can have a rough idea of how much they have left. Right? That's according to Bell of the Ranch, at least. So when you've got about 800 left, and Iran shows no signs of stopping, and is saying, you know, if you continue attacking us, well, we're going to attack all your friends in the Gulf nations, and the Gulf nation friends see that you only have about 800 interceptor missiles left, and know you and know that you're probably not going to use it to defend them because you're probably going to use it to defend your stuff because you need to keep a minimal amount for just self-preservation. They start losing confidence in your ability to be able to provide them with the protection that has been the foundational element of a lot of your agreements. But it's gone great on oil. The reserves are particularly depleted in the United States because they went into the reserves to put, when prices were going up, some additional oil on the market to try to reduce the price a little bit of an electoral gimmick. But they didn't expect the war to last this long. So now they're going to have to replenish them, which is going to take a certain amount of time, which is artificially going to keep the price of oil up, particularly since oil companies know that the United States, if it needs to replenish its strategic reserve, will be desperate to do so and be willing to pay a premium price. According to CNBC's Spencer Kimball, crude oil stockpiles in the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve have fallen below 300 million barrels, the lowest level in more than 4 decades, as global inventories stay under pressure due to Iran war. You know what I said that Donald Trump, was good at bankrupting casinos and he's going to bankrupt another one? He's bankrupting the Treasury. He's bankrupting the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. He's bankrupting the US missile stockpile. He's doing it. That's 3 extra casinos right there. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve fell by 6.1 million barrels to 298.7 million barrels last week, according to data released by the Department of Energy on Monday. The reserve, created in 1975, is at its lowest level since January 1983. President Donald Trump ordered the release of 172 million barrels in March after Iran choked off oil exports through the Strait of Hormuz, triggering the largest disruption of crude oil supplies in history. And what for? What good did it do? The drawdown in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, whose authorized storage capacity is 714 million barrels, has raised questions about whether the United States government stockpiles are on the verge of depletion. The minimum amount of oil needed to safely operate the SPR is about 70 million barrels, an Energy Department spokesperson told CNBC in July. Mm. So there were 470 million barrels in the SPR that has a capacity of 714. He's released 172. There are 298 left, and you need 70 to safely operate the SPR. So he has a little more than 4 times the amount that he had to operate safely when he had uh, between 6 and 7 times that before this started. There's enough oil left in the SPR to do another release if needed, said David Goldwyn, who served as a State Department Special Envoy for International Energy Affairs under President Barack Obama. Quote, I'm not worried about the stability of the reserve or our ability to do another drawdown. I was going to say down draw. If we needed to, Goldwyn told CNBC. Here, there is a little graph here because we love graphs. We do. They're a lot of fun. The U.S. Strategic Oil Reserve here. So look at that. So August 20th, 1982, 270,455,000 barrels, going up a lot until November 2nd, 1990, where it hit just under 590 million barrels. Stayed in a range until that area went up again around October 7th, 2005 to about 690 million barrels, hit a peak on June 24th, 2011 of 726,531 million barrels, had been decreasing a little bit within a range to about 654 million barrels on August 7th, 2020, and then a precipitous drop during the COVID time when it was needed to about 340, about let's say 350,000 around June 2023. It's the started building the reserves again, and it got to a peak of about 442,000 on March 20th. And then since then, boom, 298.7. Precipitous down. It's almost a line directly down. It didn't even go down that fast during COVID. This line is sharper now. Um, wow. So that's what's happening with the oil reserves. Public approvals, well, I mean, that's in the toilet for Donald Trump. We keep on hearing about public opinion polling stating his record disapproval rating for him, particularly with independents who appear to have completely abandoned him, and also people from racial minorities like a Black and a Latino who had surprisingly voted more for him in the last election, but they've seen him in action and they don't like it. Also, with regard to the midterms coming up, there's about 12 weeks to go, fewer than 100 days. And there was a time when it was considered completely out of the question that the Democrats would be able to flip the Senate, the House maybe, but not the Senate. But now the Senate is actually looking rather possible. Uh, Out of the seats that will be up for grabs in the midterms, with in the United States. I think there will be uh, because the United States does their things one third, one third, one third, and the senators are elected for 6-year terms. So um, there's a rollover that happens every 2 years in the United States. There are 35 Senate races, but there are only 9 seats that will be key to running the to determining the majority. Uh, North Carolina is one. Maine is another. Susan Collins is the senator at play there. Um, we have, in addition, Michigan. We have so the bridge is very important with regard to that because there's a Senate race there. Ohio, Alaska, Iowa, Texas. Yes, Texas, New Hampshire, and Georgia. And CNN recently put out a list of those 9 and put them in order and said Georgia of the 9 is the seat that's less likely to flip, and that's the seat that's actually held by the Democrat John Ossoff. You'll remember when they had all that major hoopla in Georgia a few years ago, and they had to fill those Senate seats. He was I believe, um, yeah, he was the one, yeah, because they had to do both seats in that year, and that was and Georgia got flipped Democrat that time around. So he is the level of support that he has is growing in the seat, which makes it less likely than a Republican will take it. Uh, and then if you are looking in Texas, uh, last month, Texas was number 9. So of the seats that could flip, the least likely, and now it has moved up to 7th because the state and the race is becoming more competitive. Texas is the state where Representative James Tallarico, Democratic state representative, is running against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton is a literal walking human train wreck. Right? They could not have picked a worse candidate in terms of that. But he's a Trump guy, so Trump endorsed him and he won. But people are really liking Tallarico, and it seems that they're in a very competitive race. The Fox News survey, which again, Fox News, not great for news, but for when it comes to public opinion polling, one of the best outfits out there. The Fox News survey showed Democrats with an enthusiasm advantage over Republicans, and more voters expressed concern about Paxton's character than worry that Tallarico is too extreme. Taken together, the findings represent a warning sign for Republicans in a state Trump carried by nearly 14 points just 2 years ago. Tallarico has proven to be one of the Democratic Party's strongest fundraisers, raising $68.6 million since the start of his campaign and ending June with $21.5 million in the bank. Paxton has brought in $9.2 million over his Senate run and entered July with $1.8 million. In Texas, the Democrat has got $21.5 million in the bank, and the Republican has 1.8. The Democrat is raising 68.6 million to 9.2 million for the Republican in Texas. National Republican strategists say Paxton's fundraising is picking up, but he likely will need additional help to make up the spending difference in a large state like Texas with expensive media markets. The broader GOP will turn its attention to Texas next month as Trump hosts an unusual midterm convention in Dallas, but there have been no signs that any of the GOP aligned groups are ready to send an injection of cash for Paxton's campaign just yet. Paxton is going to have to rely on the national GOP fundraising to be sending money his way to be able to afford enough money to compete with Tallarico to win. Quote, I'm optimistic that they'll come soon, Paxton told Fox News on Sunday, but we need help now, he argued, pointing to Tallarico's strong ad spending. That could change as the fall months approach, and MAGA Incorporated, the pro-Trump super PAC, may be one of the most closely watched outside entities as the group is sitting on $400 million of untapped funds. On the Democratic side, Senate Majority PAC has also not committed money to the contest. In recent weeks, Paxton and Tallarico both campaigned in town halls along the U.S.-Mexico border, an area heavily populated by Hispanic voters. Though Trump made significant gains with Latino voters in 2024, cracks have emerged in the GOP support with that voting bloc, which could be key in deciding the outcome of this Senate race. So, looking more and more, and it's also looking like they have a buffer because there's one state that's close, and if they lose that one, for example, like Michigan, for example, if they're not able to flip Michigan, that one goes Republican. They actually have a chance in Iowa as well, oddly enough. GOP Representative Ashley Hinson has so far outpaced State Representative Josh Turk in the money race, ending June with $6.7 million in the bank compared to her Democratic rival, who had $2.4 million after winning a contested primary. The Democratic aligned SMP, what's SMP here? I have no idea what that means, has upped its spending plans in the state to $30 million, bringing it on par with the $29 million promised by the GOP aligned SLF. Polls conducted earlier this summer showed a near even contest. Democrats are hoping frustration about the GOP's handling of the economy, including tariff impacts on farmers, will prompt voters to break for Turek, a self described prairie populist. At the same time, they're aware of the challenging task ahead in the state. Trump went by 13 points in 2024. Um, so, yeah, again, a bit of a long shot, but still listed number 6 on the states that would flip. And according to this, the states most likely to flip would be North Carolina, where the Democrats are running somebody who's very well known and has great name recognition, Roy Cooper, here in that race. So that will probably go his way. And it looks like um, the voters in Maine, even though they had to get rid of their original candidate for the Democrats, the person that has replaced him is Troy Jackson. And it seems that he has been able to pick up where it is that Graham Plattner had left off. With a University of New Hampshire Survey Center poll stating that the Maine Democrats have 49% support among likely voters compared to 46% for Collins. The fact that the new candidate has been embraced rather quickly, even though he's operating in a compressed window, he's got about less fewer than 100 days to execute a campaign from scratch, is seems to be uh, being well received, despite the fact that he faces a fundraising deficit against Collins, who ended the second quarter with 11 million in the bank. But the Jackson team says that he's already raised 3 million since formally entering the race, which is a decent enthusiasm level, and hopefully he'll be able to maintain that. So, electorally, things are not looking good. The public approval does not look good. The oil reserves do not look good. The defense situation is not good. The bond yields are not good. The interest rates are not going the way Trump wants. The debt adding to the deficit will drop 2 trillion this year. Just incredible. Um, all the elements for stagflation. Then we get to Iran, where Iran says that it's close to a final deal with Oman to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. However, the deal is conditional on the United States accepting terms that will make it break out into hives, including lifting the naval blockade and sanctions, as well as paying reparations for war damages. Iran is trying to force the president to cave as he's heading into the midterms with a weakened economy and an angry base. It seems like Iran, too, is trying to execute some regime change. Aslan Adantasbash, a fellow at the Brookings Institute, says that Iran wants to use this time, use their leverage, but also the midterm calendar for stronger agreement that establishes their sovereignty over Hormuz. It's a gamble on the part of Iran because the risk is that if it doesn't strike a deal soon, there could be greater internal unrest in the country as its economy worsens. We mentioned the defense pact between those three nations that could be a growing one, particularly since Turkey has one of the world's fastest growing defense industries. And a pact like this will allow it to increase its influence in the Gulf nations. And there's a growing rift as well with Netanyahu with regard to what he appears to be doing in Israel and Lebanon and Yemen. And it seems that Netanyahu might not be willing to follow Trump's lead anymore. Then you look at certain sectors, automobiles. According to Canadian Auto Dealer and Yahoo Finance, if we look at the big picture for 2025 auto trade, Canada's total share of vehicle imports originating from the United States settled at 43.7%, down from 49.1% prior to the trade dispute. The share of U.S. manufactured passenger vehicle sales plummeted to a historic low of 36% over the first 10 months of 2025. This is down drastically from Canada's historical decade long average of 49%. We are buying fewer US cars as well. Not buying the booze, not vacationing there, and we are not buying the cars. So we imported about 7% more US cars than we sold, which surely sent a signal to the dealerships for how much they were going to order this year. Trade data reveals that US vehicle exports to Canada dropped 22% year over year for the 12-month period ending in March 2026. Way to go, Canada. Don't buy the booze, don't buy the cars, don't travel. On housing, they're having a bit of a crunch. Average rate on a 30-year mortgage in the United States has climbed to nearly 6.7%. The United States servicing its debt is 3.44%, and I just renewed my mortgage for 5 years for fewer than 1% higher than that. United States, 6.7. Home sales were down in June and July. So home sales numbers were down in June. Our market is starting to pick up. July numbers come out in August 11th. So July numbers came out yesterday. Um, take a look at that. And U.S. existing home sales fell 1.7% in July to a seasonally adjusted rate of 4.06 million units. According to the National Association of Realtors, the national median home price hit a record high for July at 434,100, a 2% increase from the previous year, while the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate climbed to 6.69%. So there. I'm not sure what is 434 100 to Canadian dollars. So the average price of a home is $604,063 in the United States. Average price of a home in Canada, these numbers are in Canadian dollars, 696,078. So about $100,000 more to buy a house in Canada than in the United States at the moment. But in the United States, their housing prices are going up, whereas in Canada, our housing prices have been decreasing steadily over several months, I think, for the better part over the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken here. So again, better situation with housing. On booze, of course, as we mentioned, the booze boycott has hit hardest in California, Kentucky, Tennessee, states where 75% of California's exports of wine is to Canada, and it has virtually dried up. In fact, in some places, sales have dropped so much that wineries are burning some of their vines because it costs more to keep them than they're making from them. In Kentucky, some of the production lines have been idled. And of course, tourism, Canada, the numbers are just well known how much they have been dropping. And we also know that flights routes have been canceled. Says Canadian tourism to the United States remains down roughly 29% compared to pre-boycott levels in 2024. Despite a modest consecutive year-over-year uptick in spring and early summer 2026, the ongoing slump follows political and trade tensions that prompted widespread travel boycotts. So it says here that there's a slight rebound. Canadian visitors to the U.S. were up 10% in July. Uh, that's according to Forbes, but still down 29% year over year. And we have people like the senator of Vermont, Mr. Peter Welch, in a committee in the United States telling the trade representative how much they are hurting and asking him to fix this. So the Americans are getting pressure from senators, they're getting pressure from fellow citizens, they're getting pressure from the business community, they're getting pressure from various unions, all at the same time to do this while their economy is going to pot, while bond yields are going up, while Iran is not working for them, while their automobile sector profits are decreasing because Canadians are not buying their cars. The tourism industry is decreasing because we're not going. Their booze industry is hurting because we're not buying their stuff. It costs them more to service their debt. None of these things are on a path to improvement. Whereas in Canada, we just saw that interview with Mr. Winkler of Bloomberg talking about how we're doing so well at attracting investment, and again all these metrics, inflation, job creation, whatnot. How we're doing so much better than the United States. We're not doing fantastic because we're taking hits, but so much better. And that in Canada, the main important thing is that the public is behind the government, whereas in the United States, the public is not. So Mark Carney has all the ability to go into the trade room with Donald Trump, like he did when he went into the awful office and talked about certain properties not being for sale, and talked about how he met with the people of Canada, or the shareholders of Canada, and they told him that it was not for sale. Sorry, Donald, man. Look at my people. Look at the numbers, man. My people are just not down for that. All the public opinion polls are telling me to hit you harder. Sorry, no can do. The shareholders won't let me. You're gonna have to make me better deal than that. United States is not in a solid position as a lot of people, particularly the conservatives, who keep on wanting us to keep our wagon affixed to them. Again, it is never good to be that exposed to a single point of potential economic failure, or failure of any kind. Diversify, diversify, diversify. This is all stuff we should have been doing long ago anyway. Right? We should have done a little bit more like Australia was doing. Australia has shown us that it can be done. Right? We need to become much more of an international country. We've got the agreement signed. We built the legal architecture. Now it's just exploiting them and maximizing these agreements, while, of course, signing more, which is what we are working on. And if something does happen to pan out with the United States at some point, that's great. Like I said, but some of those things will probably have to pan out with extra enforcement mechanisms of some kind that we can rely upon, because we can't rely upon the word of our partner. And like I said, we had a prime minister who's a risk manager. I have a feeling that perhaps most of the negotiating that's going on right now are not on numbers or on quotas, but how do we make sure that we can enforce this damn thing? Please tell us how we can nail Jello to a wall this time. There is no way, of course, because Donald Trump makes up the rules as he goes along. But we can do our damn best. So take heart, Canada. Take heart. Because, again, not necessarily, but based on the stuff that we know, the most likely scenario forward is that there is going to be something presented to Donald Trump, and there will be enough there for him to consider it worthy of either discussing more, or if he needs to take this off the table, maybe he'll make a bigger gesture. Right? But there will be something that, and there will probably be a delay to the coming into force, because he won't say, "Well, I won't impose these tariffs anymore," because he needs a sword over our head at all time, or they will come in at a much, much, much lower, reasonable rate, a rate that we are probably able to, well, that we won't enjoy, but that we're probably able to absorb, right, and then move on. So, or we are going to have some agreements in certain sectors and say, okay, we've made this progress, and this gives us hope that we can make agreements on other ones. We could have some temporary side deals like that, but like I said, so there could be something on the 19th. Like there could be not much. There's a whole range there, but I would say that the actual full coming into a force of 50%, as predicted, would probably be unlikely, unless there's something that happens in the last few days that Donald Trump doesn't like and wants to try to impose it on us for a few days, to try and scare us somewhat. Of course, there will be some rather volatile market reaction to that that might scare Donald Trump. So I'm not sure if he wants to roll that dice. He's crazy enough to do it, reckless enough to do it. Don't know. But that's most likely We're going to go. If there's something else happening, then that means we're in a totally different and new situation, and we will have to respond accordingly. But these are most likely the paths based on what we know in the past to be true of him. So uh, we will be on the edge-ish of our seats over the next few days. Like I said, the meetings have been furious and fast between the sides. They've met 3 times over the last 3 weeks. Last meeting was not particularly long from what the reports are saying, which could be a situation that is positive, right? It's because the mood seems to be positive, so it means that it seems that they are working efficiently. I would say through certain things. Um, that would be my guess here with regard to that. But yes, it would appear that there is progress being made according to iPolitics. Here it says Canada, U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, Canada's chief negotiator Janice Charette met with their American counterparts in D.C. on Tuesday in hopes of securing a deal that will avoid the latest wave of tariffs. The meeting, which started at 1:30, wrapped up just before 3 p.m., so see, very short, comes only 8 days before the U.S. president 50% tariffs on a swath of Canadian goods goes into effect. CBC News is reporting that both sides are aiming to present something to Trump at least a day before that deadline elapses, but it's unclear if there's been any further progress from where we stood over the weekend. iPolitics and other outlets reported that trade negotiations are showing renewed momentum, with both sides increasingly focused on potential concessions and tariff changes. Canadian industry sources familiar with the discussion said the change in tone has come as both sides acknowledge that reaching an agreement will require movement from each country. Discussions are now focusing on what concessions or changes could help resolve the dispute rather than which side is responsible for creating it. And that gives me an impression here that the Canadian strategy of basically showing up and saying, no, sorry, that's not going to work for us. We're here to negotiate a serious deal. Here are some serious terms, has been working. The United States might be coming to accept that we are not going to bend a knee, and that they are going to have to give a little on something too. That's what I'm reading from that interpretation here. Canada's auto sector is urging the Carney government to remain firm in trade negotiations with the U.S., even if it means no immediate relief from the punishing tariffs on the industry. Flavio Volpe, president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association of Canada, said the Trump administration miscalculated the response from Canadians, and Prime Minister Mark Carney has broad support from voters to turn down a deal. Quote, if 2/3 of the country think you can walk away from these guys politically, he's not in the pickle that he might have been a year ago in fighting with the Americans. The auto industry is one of several exposed to damaging sector-specific tariffs that have been in place for the past year. Since the spring of 2025, the U.S. has slapped a 25% tariff on imported vehicles. The tariff doesn't apply to U.S. content in vehicles that are deemed compliant under the Canada-United States-Mexico trade deal, known popularly as CUSMA. Canada has responded with matching tariffs, though there are exemptions for manufacturers that are still operating in Canada. Trump partly justified his latest round tariffs on Canada's retaliatory auto measures. Volpe said he's encouraged by recent comments from U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer calling for great vigilance against Chinese involvement in the North American auto sector and acknowledging the impact of the tariffs on U.S. automakers who source parts from across the continent. He said Trump's pivot on auto parts shows the White House is sensitive to concerns from American automakers. The initial tariffs included no CUSMA exemption, but were revised by Trump after outcry from the industry. Volpe said the principles of that deal could offer a path forward for a broad agreement on the auto sector, and he's heard discussions around a similar exemption process in the latest round of talks. So there we go, kids and cubs, with regard to that. See here, it says that today as well, 2 senior Team Carney ministers will be making the rounds in their home province of Quebec. It's worth noting, unconfirmed reports that Ottawa could make changes to supply management system for dairy products have already been met with near universal opposition. First up, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne, who is set to join Atikamekw Nation Grand Chief Constant Awashish and Latuc Mayor Pierre Pacarard to share details of a new federal support for local housing during a mid-afternoon media availability at the local Service Canada hub in Champagne's home riding of St. Maurice. And later this afternoon, Industry Minister Mélanie Joly will highlight new federal funding to support growth of an innovative Île de la Madeleine business. So there you go. There will be also an announcement of a fresh tranche of federal support for climate resilience projects that will protect communities from severe weather. That will be with Environment Minister Julie DeBruson, with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities CEO Carol Saab, as well as the FCM President Tim Tierney and local Liberal MP Shannon Medema. Let's see what else here. there's going to be an announcement by the Secretary of State for Labor, John Zaruchelli, that will deliver additional funding to Calgary-based Educational Partnership Foundation to expand its trades and career programming. That'll be interesting. Finance committee members are scheduled to hold a closed-door session around 10 a.m. on a draft to go through the draft report on what they heard during the opening round of pre-budget consultations. So there you go, kits and cubs. Little some stuff on the horizon. There you go. That's it today, kits and cubs, for this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you loved listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do that. It means the world to us. Um, if you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, one of the ways you can do that is by scanning this QR code, which will bring you to our YouTube page right here. If you go there, please click on our buttons like, share, and subscribe. Please click on our notification bell and select all. And if you happen to be watching this episode fewer than 7 days after the original broadcast and you are watching on your tablet or your phone, please swipe left on the comment section and offer us some hype points if you've not already done that 3 times this week, because that's the maximum time you can do that. But it does allow smaller audience shows like us to gain more visibility, and we thank you for that. Other ways you can help Damn Fam, lovely members of the Damn Fam, is by making a contribution to the Emergency Hydration Fund here at the Beaver Lodge, where you can fill my Beaver cup with lovely hot chocolate to help me get through the production day. And if there's a little extra, well, that goes to our subscription fees, like keeping our pod page up, which is thanks to the Ray Girl. She does that, and I believe we will be renewing again for a year. So thank you so much for your generous donation that way. And of course, Descript that we use, that we are going to be using, I should say, to get the audio versions of our podcasts out. And of course, YouTube and Restream. Hopefully, we'll be changing to another platform when this one is over so that we stop having problems with it. But all these things cost a little bit of money, and we are grateful for your support in helping us cover them. And you can do that when you donate to our coffee page or our emergency hydration fund, also known as our tip jar, at coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, of course. That way, we get 95 to 97% of your donation. You can also donate via YouTube through Super Chats, stickers, and memberships. We get about 70%. And if you are avoiding the USCE Tech Bros, a direct bank transfer from your bank to ours using our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. That guarantees that your transaction is entirely Canadian. No USC Tech Bros get a share of your money. None of it goes to Donald Trump as a donation so he can do terrible things to us. Your conscience is completely clear, and we get 100% of your donation. Pretty good, eh? Yeah. All right. So thank you for all the ways that you support us. We thank you for your support. And if you are not able to support us financially, please do not worry, because the gifts of your attention, participation are the ones that matter the most to us. And we want to hear from you. So please use that same email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, to write to us to let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly, compliments, constructive critique. We like them both. Guest suggestions for the interview project. Those are good as well. Questions about politics you would like us to answer, questions about the show you would like us to answer, all of that. And of course, your good news, which helps us when the days of doom scrolling get really dark and heavy. Because we get to share in your happiness, and we like that very much. So thank you for writing to us. If you want to reach us on our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, also on the Jitter. We have Substack, Beaver Bites there. We have True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home, as well as our Instagram run by Kit Uncover. We have our coffee page, like we just mentioned, of course. And we have the unofficial Damn Fam Discord, where you can keep the conversation going with the best Damn Fam in all of podcasting when there isn't a show on. Very, very good people, solid people, wonderful people, and always a good time. So there you go. Lots of ways to stay in contact with us. And of course, right down here in the comment section on YouTube, which is the absolute best way for us to see what it is that you are writing to us. And we do read everything that we see, even though we're not necessarily able to respond to everyone. And we thank you for your contributions. Also, remember our hashtags: kids who cook, kids who cultivate, and kids who craft, in case you're doing something creative, yummy, or digging your hands in the dirt, and you would like to show us what it is that you are doing. I do not know why that happened, So let's try and remove that. There we go. That's much better. Um, One thing, kits and cubs, just wanted to bring to your attention because I think somebody asked me in the chat this morning, and since I talked about kits who cook, I made myself my morning tea, which you have been seeing me drink today. Uh, but this is what it looked like since somebody asked when I uh, come on, work with me here uh, when I put it up this morning, and somebody asked, "Ooh, that's an interesting tea." It's basically a chai tea. I just warm a little milk with put a little brown sugar, and then I foam up the milk when it comes out warm. Put in the chai and the water, and then when it's all foamy and stuff like that, I add a little nutmeg, cinnamon, and turmeric on it to create the beautiful little color pattern. And actually, I'm going to do a little early words of wisdom because that's my words of wisdom. If you got to eat or you got to drink a little something, right? A lot of people do it as um, um, an obligation thing or a thing that just functional. Food and sitting down to eat or making yourself a little cup of something is actually a little joy and a little celebration, a little treat that you get to give to yourself a few times a day. So if you have the option, yeah, it takes a couple of extra seconds to warm the milk and foam it up and put some pretty colors and some cinnamon and nutmeg in there and stuff like that. But it's just so pretty. Like I said, then when you go to drink it, you just get a little bit of extra joy. You get a little bit of extra joy making it, a little bit of extra joy in consuming it. And sometimes that's all it takes to make a day just a little more special. So there you go. If you're making some food or some yummy drinks for yourself, take the time to put a little extra love in it because love tastes good. Early words of wisdom. Kids and cubs here also. Because democracy is something that you do. We have our by elections provincially in Ontario, in, let's see if I remember them York Simcoe, East Hamilton, Stony Creek, and Scarborough Southwest. There we go. And we have the federal ones, of course, in Vancouver, North Vancouver, Capilano. Beaches, East York, and Chicoutimi-Lafiard. So if you live in any of those ridings, provincially or federally, please get to know your local candidates and plan your vote. And if you would like to help with the process of democracy, call Elections Ontario or Elections Canada, as the case may be, and volunteer for a polling station. The by elections for the federal level are on August 31st, and in Ontario are September 3rd. Also, we have the party leadership races for the New Brunswick PCs. I did look into it. If you are New Brunswick, you have until the 14th to buy your membership. So that's the end of this week. So please get in there and buy your membership, particularly if you happen to not necessarily be a traditional progressive conservative voter. Do buy your membership and make sure that the PCs put the absolute best possible candidate, or the one that would do the least damage, up as the one that could be premier. Let's not take the risk. Let's do some early intervention. All right. And you can do that as well if you're in Ontario for the Ontario Liberal race, in Nova Scotia for the Nova Scotia Liberals, and federally, everyone in Canada can do that for the Green Party leadership race. So please buy your memberships and participate at the ground level. That's where things are taking place. Finally, we had that petition that we were talking about here. Um, the one sponsored by Elizabeth May to ask for Ambassador Hoekstra to be getting the boot. Formally, it says, we, the undersigned residents of Canada, call upon the government of Canada to formally declare Pete Hoekstra persona non grata and request his removal as U.S. Ambassador to Canada. Raise with the United States the pattern of conduct by Ambassador Hoekstra consistent with the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, and 3, direct a parliamentary committee to review U.S. diplomatic interference in Canadian domestic affairs. This petition, the link I will provide, link to which I will provide here in the chat right now, was the subject of a little bit of media coverage as well. According to the Canadian press here, it says A petition set to be presented in the House of Commons this fall calls on the government to declare the U.S. ambassador persona non grata and remove him from Canada. The online petition accuses Pete Hoekstra of making statements that undermine the Canada-U.S. relationship and of intervening in Canadian political discourse in a manner inconsistent with diplomatic protocol. It says the Liberal government should also direct a parliamentary committee to review U.S. diplomatic interference in Canadian affairs. More than 29,000 people have signed the petition, which was launched by a woman from Calgary and will be presented in Parliament by Green Party leader Elizabeth May. Hoekstra made headlines this summer by saying that Canada's annexation by the United States would be a great topic of discussion for Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump. A persona non grata declaration is a tool in the UN's Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations that allows a country to strip diplomatic immunity from an individual and force them to leave. Well, this was written August 11th, published at 1:47 p.m. More than 29,000 people have signed the petition, it says. Well, now there were stories like this in more than just iPolitics, of course, but it said 29,000. Gee, I wonder what have happened since it got that much attention. Oh my, 56,697. That is the greatest number of signatures I ever seen on a House or Commons.ca petition so far, and we got till November 18th to collect more. You know what to do, Canada. Maybe we can get this one into the 100,000. Let's spread the word. I'm sure that there's not a lot of people who like the loneliest man in Ottawa. But 56,000, that warms the cockles of my heart. I come bearing gifts, children. I come bearing gifts. ah. Oh, there's another Hoekstra petition? Kitland M says $29,000 on one and 50. I'm thinking that this one is the same one, but like there was 29,000 before publication of these stories, and now it's 57,000 now that people are aware of it. But if there are two, and I'm mistaken, that is indeed possible. I'm just not aware of the other one. But yeah, that's going on. I love it. Oh my God. Okay. That's because democracy is something that we do. We already did the words of wisdom a little early. So, kids and cubs, it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And at the count of three, could you please give me a Mr. Beaver? Please cue the cock on one, two, and three. Ah, yes. Here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, some news about some Canadians who make us proud. We've got a little bit to talk about here. The Tour de France Femmes recently concluded. 148 racers entered the competition, and we had, I believe, 6 of them from Canada. 2 did not finish the race, but it was a fantastic performance by the Canadians. Again, 148 entrants, and 4 Canadians finished, I believe, in the, let me just check here, making sure I got it, in the top 32. So number 31 is Nadia Gontova. She had a good one. And then in 24th place, Sarah Van Dam had a good result. And then in 18th place We had Magdalene Valliere, which you have heard from before if you follow cycling, has represented us very well before, and a top 10 finish by Isabella Holmgren, who ended up finishing eighth and uh, did as well in one of the stages in the stage five as finishing fifth. One of the Canadians along the way came close to getting a podium as well in the stages, finishing fourth, which would be Sarah Van Dam on stage six. Almost made it on the podium. But congratulations, that's a fantastic performance in a field of 148 for cyclists in the top 32. That's amazing. Also at the PIF London Championship of Golf on the Ladies European Tour, Anna Huang from Canada, whose world ranking is 43rd, won the whole tournament with a final card of minus 22 for the whole tournament. So congratulations. And also going on right now is the Men's Pan American Cup of Volleyball. Canada is in pool play right now with 3 wins and 0 losses, victories against Trinidad and Tobago, Puerto Rico, and Costa Rica. The final pool matches against the USA before going into the playoffs. And for those of you who are fans of summer, the season and the swimmer, Summer McIntosh, is back at it. The Pan Pacific Swim Championships. She skipped the Commonwealth Games in order to prepare better for this. Have been taking place. If you remember, at nationals, she set a world record, but had to pull out after 2 events because she wasn't feeling well. Pan Pacifics start in earnest today, and I think they go until the 15th. It's the biggest competition of the season for swimmers, and Summer McIntosh looking to do some damage there. And the Canadians, off a very good performance at the Commonwealth Games, also looking to have a good performance there. So, and that will probably be covered on CBC Sports with our good friend Devin Haru. So, lots of good stuff here happening, a lot to be proud of. All right, kids and cubs, that's all I got for. Oh, yes, I forgot one more. I lied yesterday, gentle correction on myself, when I said that Leila Fernandez was the last Canadian remaining at the National Bank Open. There was one duo, young doubles duo of Alexis Galarneau and Duncan Chan. Alexis Garneau has been on the tour for a couple of years now, or trying to earn his way onto the full tour for a full season. Duncan Chan, brand new, was nowhere at the beginning of last season, and had a fantastic debut. And both of them together won 2 matches at the 1,000 level in doubles, playing together for the first time. Duncan Chan playing for the first time in the main draw at a 1,000 event, or at a tour event, period. Getting 2 big wins, and with that, both of them climbing between 300 and 400 in the world. In the doubles rankings. So a great debut from them. They were the last Canadians alive in the tournament, getting ready for a big tournament in Cincinnati at the moment. Bianco Andreescu will be playing in qualifications today. So hopefully there will be more success for our Canadians. But again, our up and comers at the National Bank Open, Next Gen, and all of them are the ones that really shined, along with Leilani Fernandez this year. Of course, the tournament still goes on until the end, but no more Canadians in the draw as of this point. But great achievement for Alexis Galarneau and Duncan Chan to reach the quarterfinal of a 1,000 doubles tournament, considering their relative lack of experience on the tour. They did us very, very, very proud. And that's all I've got for you today. Kids and Cubs, amour et bisous. And we will see you tomorrow. Hopefully, kids and cubs, I will be able to maintain this and get back to the more regular schedule. Hopefully. But things went well yesterday. Let's hope they keep on going well today, and send me a lot of luck for that tennis match. All right. Hope to report good stuff tomorrow. And with that, I am gone. Au revoir.